Hello adventurers, it is I, Soulless Venture, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today it is a Wednesday, and for July for this month, I am continuing my series for newer solo tabletop RPG players. And the series is titled How to Structure Your Solo Tabletop RPG Adventure. And so, this is part 4. If you've watched part 3, that is we covered how to resolve scenes. So now part 4 is how to add twists and surprises. And I think this is probably the second hardest part when it comes to structuring and playing your solo tabletop RPG adventure. So for today's visual, we have here this nasty looking goblin here, and he's probably here to play some tricks to maybe some like passing travelers and adventurers, and he's saying they'll never see me coming, and he's getting ready with his sword there. So that is kind of the twist and the surprise, is we never know when he will be jumping out and surprising the passing adventurers. And so with this visual, I also want to encourage you to realize that balancing the amount of information that you would want to know as a GM and as a player, it takes time to figure out that balance. And so there are a bunch of different ways that you can play a solo tabletop RPG. The two ways that I do want to cover, there is a third one. I'll cover the third one in a bit. But the two that I want to cover, there are linear campaigns where you have everything kind of mapped out and you already have an idea of how you want the story to progress. Or you have an open world exploration. So those are two different ways that you can play your solo tabletop RPG. And then the third way will be, I guess, covering more pre-made adventures. And I'll get into that later. Pre-made adventures are a little bit different. But we are going to be covering these two types of ways that you can play your solo tabletop RPG adventure and add some twists and surprises. So, number 1, we'll get right into it. Number 1, never be afraid to ask open-ended questions. Ask why. Don't be afraid of complexity. I understand that complexity can be very overwhelming at first, especially for a newer player. But that is also why we have random tables, and random tables can help guide your thinking. And the other thing is, it's okay to go back to things and not know the answer right away. So for you as the GM, you may know the answer, but not the PC that you are role-playing. So I will give you an example here. So if you are following my Cairn adventure, we have Morgwyn, who is the main protagonist and I guess the antagonist in this campaign in A Vinekin's Revenge. We have Kevin, the evil Vinekin. And right now in the campaign, he is slowly trying to take over Thornmere, and he's encouraging all of his followers and disciples to basically just get rid of the town, get rid of the mayor, so his vines and Evervale Hollow can just go back to its original beauty. And so that is kind of where we're at right now in that campaign. And the thing is, with this particular campaign, I was playing it with just kind of that basic idea that we'll have a good guy and we'll have a bad guy here. But there's some stuff in between that the dice kind of just reveal to me as I play. And so an example of like an open-ended question that I had was kind of Kevin's motive and the history behind Evervale Hollow, behind the town of Thornmere. And so this was the part that I actually didn't film, but I actually played offline, and I rolled on a couple of random tables, and I actually put together the history of Evervale, of Thornmere. And so basically, just to give you like a rundown here, when I was rolling on the random tables and such, I learned that Kevin has actually wanting to please Arteris, who is in the world of Vinekin's Revenge. Arteris is kind of like Mother Nature, and Arteris actually placed Kevin in Evervale Hollow to protect, to nurture. And unfortunately, he, I guess, quote unquote, failed, and Thornmere just started to thrive as a town. And so, and Arteris was very upset with Kevin and was sad that Evervale Hollow was being taken over by Thornmere. And so that is something that I, as a GM, kind of did on my own time, I guess, and I didn't really bring my PC Morgwin into that. And so I'll cover this eventually later on in my points here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is it's okay to have open-ended questions, it's okay to ask why, and it's okay for you as the GM to know that information and not your PC yet. And so this is where I was kind of saying earlier, that balance of knowing the right amount of information you would want to know as a GM versus a PC is very important. But of course, everyone plays differently, and it also just takes a lot of trial and error, and it takes time to figure out how you play and how you want information to kind of flow in your head, basically, as you're playing. So that is number one. Ask open-ended questions. And also, you should jot down these questions too, because these are probably certain things that you might go back to that you didn't even realize would kind of come up later on in the adventure, in the campaign. So that is number one. Never be afraid to ask open-ended questions, and don't be afraid of that complexity too. All right, so now for number two, depending on the tables and the oracles that you are using, you will roll for a random event, and then you will see what happens. So before you start a scene, here's an example that you can do. You can simply roll a d6, and anything below a 6 could mean that the scene would just continue as normal. And then if you do roll a 6, there is a random event. So that is an example for you to kind of know when a random event or a twist happens. Another way to do it is maybe you failed a check. And so you failed a check, maybe it was like a really bad fail, like you rolled a 1 or something. And then that will give you the chance to roll for a random event. Maybe you rolled a failed stealth check or something, and then when you rolled on the random event, there is a new NPC that comes into the scene, and he surprise attacks you or something. So that is an example of a random event and how you can roll for a random event. So just to give you a couple of ideas for tools here, I have here this old school revival solo role playing guide. I know I show this like all the time, but basically for a random event to happen, if you roll on this table particularly, you will see that these doubles, when you roll doubles like a 1-1, a 3-3, a 5-5, it will trigger a modified kind of answer. So you would have a yes and, a yes but, a no but, a no and. And so here, it says here, when you have an and, so and results, add an additional variable. So if the question asked by the PPC was narrowly focused, they can choose what additional variable makes the most sense within the solo game narrative. And so this is also you as a GM to kind of like call the shots of how you want to interpret these results. And now, for a but over here, results provide an immediately noticeable consequence to the result. So that is something that you want to keep in mind, that when you're using this table and you're rolling and you have these double results which trigger a random event, you have an and a but, that is something for you to keep in mind as you try to interpret the scene, interpret the results. And of course, if you have a complex question and you want to know the answer to them, then you can roll on this table, and that'll help that way. So that is for the Old School Revival Solo Role Playing Guide. And then for random events in using the Mythic Game Master emulator here, we have, I know I use this all the time for my adventures, so this will probably seem familiar to you. So if you roll doubles, so let's say we're rolling like what, a D100 and we get like 44 or something. When you get 44, that means that a random event happens here. And then you can roll on the random event focus table. So you'd roll here, and then you'll roll here, and then you'll see, okay, we have 82. And 82 would mean that there's a random event, but it is in the favor of the PC. So PC positive. So maybe there is something beneficial that happens that'll actually help the PC and their adventure. So that is an example of how to use random event tables. So they kind of use the both. They both use kind of the same thing, where if you roll doubles, then that means that there is a random event of some sort. And I know for Solo Dark here, if you are using this resource and you're using this oracle, if you roll a 10, that would be a twist. So that is something to keep in mind if you're rolling and you're using a Solo Dark here, and then you would roll on the prompts table to kind of figure out, okay, what is happening in the scene now. That would be a random event. Now that you have rolled for a random event and you're trying to see what happens, so we covered different tools here, and now the third point is to now interpret the meaning and the results of the dice and make it tie in as a random event, meaning make it tie back to the PC maybe, or it can tie back to the NPC. And then that's kind of where you would ask questions, you would push the meaning, and you of course will just make the call as a GM. So I'll give you an example here. We will look at the Adventure Crafter. So the nice thing about the Adventure Crafter here is there are tables in here that kind of help you prep for if a new character would come in or the most logical character would come into the scene here. So you actually have a whole list that you can like fill out. There's like 100 in here. So you have a whole list that you can fill out where you can put in a new character, you can put in the most logical character, and there are different spots to put these in. So when you make those rolls, you will really never know who will pop in. And so that is an example for making a random event tie back into the adventure, into the scene. And so I think for an example here, if you have, let's say, a new NPC coming into the scene, and you want to know who this NPC is. And so there's this table here. It's a special trait table for characters that are coming in. So here, for a 1 to a 50, could be the character is just an individual. So not tied to any of the factions, not tied to anything like specific. So a pretty like neutral kind of character there. And then if you get 51 to 57, the character is an organization. So maybe this character is tied to a certain faction. And so, yeah, like for example here, general members of this organization are considered part of the character as a community. And then here, this would be an object. Examples would be probably like a city. It could be like certain object that's like within the scene. I know I've interpreted this as maybe it's like a particular location on the map. or maybe it's like a particular like item in the room that I'm like exploring. Another result would be the characters connected to the plot line. So maybe there is something about this scene that makes the NPC connected. Or it could be the total opposite. The character is not connected at all to this plot line, and maybe he's just like distracting um, the PC in a way. You can interpret it that way. This way, the character assists in actually resolving the scene. So maybe the character is actually helping or has the same kind of motive as the PC. And then here, the character is connected to an existing character. Maybe this could be a relative, maybe they were friends at one point. And so an example that I have, I'll use my Cairn campaign example for a Vinekin's Revenge. So me in my GM kind of headspace, I really wanted Morgwyn's twin sister to come back into the scene in some way, or not the particular scene, but into the adventure in some way. Because the backstory is Morgwyn and her twin sister Celine, they actually split off, because since they are twins, they would be pretty recognizable, since their whole family is wanted dead, basically. So they split off, and it's been years, and I really wanted to bring back Celine, her twin sister, somehow into the story. And so with a random event that happened, so I'm talking about step 2 here. So I rolled for a random event. I was interpreting certain like words that I got from the tables, and it made me realize like, oh, this word, I can't remember the word off the top of my head, but there were certain words that made me think it could be related to Celine. And so now into step 3, I interpreted the meaning of these results, and I came up with the idea that Celine actually enters into the scene as a member of the Wildborn Chapel. And the Wildborn Chapel is kind of a faction that Morgwyn is kind of against, kind of not. She's still trying to like figure out, are they really just brainwashed by Kevin, or are they actually evil? And so I think that is kind of the steps that I took to take the meaning of the dice, of the words that I've received from the oracles and such, and applied it to potential NPCs that I wanted as a GM to go back into the story. And so then again, that is the balance that I keep like talking about. Like you want to like call the shots as a GM, but you also want to balance kind of the results of the dice. And don't be discouraged if that is something that you can't exactly grasp yet. Like I keep saying, I feel like in almost every video now, that it doesn't click right away, and that is expected, and that is okay. So that is number 3. So now we're going into number 4. So now you are stepping away from that GM headspace, and now you are role playing as your character. So now that you have set the scene and you've presented to the PC kind of what's going on, what would the PC do now? And what does it change? So to kind of go back to my example of Morgwyn realizing that Celine is kind of part of this questionable cult, the Wildborn Chapel, it changed kind of how the PC should proceed now. And it changed how she viewed the chapel, and how she viewed her sister too. And so I think it's really important that as the GM, you really put yourself in the players' minds, and you really kind of think, okay, how would they take this new information now, and what would that look like for the next scene, for the next action that the PC would want to take. So I think that's also really important for you as the GM to also embrace changes as well for your PC. Because I think if you are role-playing your PC and you're really just taking in mind that this is a living character who is developing and growing in the story and the adventure, it's important to embrace that change. All right, and then lastly, for number 5, take notes and see how the PC learns about different information. So I think it's really important for my characters, at least how I like to role play my characters, is I think it's really important for them to work hard to find that information that you know as a GM. And so, for example, in my Cairn example here, I made my PC explore a library. So I made Morgan explore a library to kind of uncover the history and the secrets of Evervale, of Thornmere. And she realized that there is actually a hidden kind of room or section that not a lot of people go to. And that is information that only people who work for the mayor, so the mayor's like officials and such, only officials have access to that room. And so she had to kind of learn how to sneak her way in, or I think she had to kind of just try to like convince or bribe the librarian to just give her access to those archives. And that is how she learned about Kevin and Kevin's motives. So I think it's important to kind of see how you want your PC to work for that valuable information. So now I will give you guys a couple of examples. So before we dive into my story here with Henry, I'm going to give you guys some examples of kind of how I use like these steps in some campaigns that I don't really show online. So we will get into these examples now. I am going to start with my white box adventure, actually. So this is the system that I'm using to play this open world type of exploration. So this is not a linear campaign. I'll show you an example of a linear one, but this open world one is definitely the opposite. There is no like overarching campaign, and this is the region of Black Marsh. And as you can see, we have a bunch of different areas that still need to be explored of Black Marsh. So I'll give you an example of kind of asking open-ended questions. And I asked a very, very hard question that I actually was kind of frustrated that I even started the adventure like this. But here's my character. His name is Balaam, and he is a magic user. He is an elf. And the open-ended question that I asked was, who is he? And why has he waken up at Vermis Monasterium alone? So that was my question. So I started off here in this Vermis Monasterium, and I did a little bit of some kind of GM prep work, I guess. And in this area, it is a monastery that houses a large purple worm. And this purple worm used to be worshipped and adorned, but this worm could never be pleased, and it would feast on its admirers. And so people eventually have abandoned this monastery out of fear and, of course, to be safe. And so I started off with, well, let's see, why not? Let's just have Balaam wake up in this monasterium and let's have him figure himself out. So that is kind of the entire adventure, is to travel through different areas and kind of see what happens in all of these different areas. And now he's ended up in Geneva. And the random event, I guess, is he got called in by some of the town guards. The town guards, as Balaam was entering into the town, they actually pulled him aside and they were holding up some paperwork, and he didn't realize that he is actually a wanted man in Geneva. And he had no idea. He has no recollection of who he is or what happened. And so now we're slowly kind of uncovering why he was wanted. And basically, what happened was he was charged with misuse of magic. And he used this magic against a very important man. His name is Solon. Who is Solon? Oh, I think he's like the magistrate of sacred grounds. And so he's kind of responsible for overseeing the graveyards, the holy kind of, well, what's considered like the holy like temples and such throughout Geneva. And he didn't realize that he used it against Solon here. And so now he's just kind of, working through some community service because he has to pay a hefty fine and he can't afford it. He literally has 0 gold. And so here's some community service that he needs to do. He needs to help prep for the Veramis festival. Here are some things that he needs to get for the festival. And he came across some giant rats in the dungeon. And then he also came across, this was another random event, he ended up in this room and he realized that there was a prisoner in this room. And this prisoner actually has some like useful information about kind of the different factions that like lurk in the sewers. And so, yeah, so that is an example of an open world kind of campaign, and where I take a bunch of just random events that are happening and I do my best to interpret it as well as I can, and make it tie back in to either the city or make it tie back in with Balaam and kind of the history and identity of Balaam. So that is an example of like open world. And then a more linear example here. I have a couple of like linear adventures that I've played, but actually, let's use my Morkborg one-shot adventure. So this is not like a super long campaign. Obviously, it's a one-shot, and so I decided to only just have 4 different scenes. And so kind of in my head, how I'm organizing my Morkborg adventure is in the first scene, Eldara, she'll learn about the quest, and then in scene 2, she'll go into the graveyard. In scene 3, I hope what happens is she will combat the giant warped spider and find Delmira, the high priestess of forbidden magic in Galgenbeck graveyard. She'll locate her grave and get that treasure, or silver. And then the end scene, she will present the silver as an offering to the 2-headed basilisks. And so that is an example of a more linear kind of adventure. And then the third one I actually want to cover too is a pre-made adventure. So for my pre-made adventure, I'm actually playing some advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but this is a 1E adventure, but I'm actually using the 2E kind of rules. And so we have here this adventure that's already all like planned out, right? It's already written out, and it's called the Sentinel. And so we have here the adventure that's already all written out here. I actually don't use random events and twists as much if I am playing a pre-made adventure. And so usually with the pre-made adventure here, these would be kind of my quote-unquote random events, these random encounters. So I actually don't need to use I don't need to add too many twists or surprises, because I'm already going to be encountering that as I travel through the different regions here. So that, yeah, because I'm over here, and I think I'm like in a clearing now, and that's kind of where my character is resting for the night. And so yeah, so that is kind of an example for using a pre-made adventure. And so with the pre-made adventure, there's not too many twists and such. And so yeah, like I'm trying to look through my notes again. Yeah, it's been like, I don't know, a couple of weeks since I've last like played this. And so yep, she has heard some rumors. And yeah. Oh yeah. So the random event was she came across a farmhouse, and it's empty, so it was safe for her to like rest there for the night. And she found a gem with a eagle kind of etched into the gem, and that is worth, you know, some money. So she could probably sell that when she goes back into town or something. And then she can get more supplies. But yeah, so that is an example of using like a pre-made adventure and not really needing to roll for some surprises and twists, because you're going to be kind of seeing that anyways through this adventure. So how I'm kind of using and playing this is I'm actually only reading certain parts that I would want to know as a PC. And then of course I have kind of the background as a GM. So I'm still trying to learn how to, you know, navigate pre-made adventures. I think I have like a good idea of how, but the GM, or the Mythic GM emulator, they also have like a really good section in here to help guide you as you're playing pre-made adventures. So that is kind of my two examples, or not two, those are my three, I guess, examples of kind of balancing the amount of information you would know as a GM, as a PC, when you're playing either a linear kind of campaign, an open world exploration, or a pre-made adventure. So those are all of the examples, and now we will do a playthrough of our kind of example using or playing Henry's adventure. Okay, so now for Henry's adventure, we have over here, so we had the gambling table over here. So the group of folks that are gambling at this table, and then we have Henry over here, and he was able to convince these two to join him in the adventure. And Skander over here is kind of out of the scene here. But right now we are in the fisherman village kind of hub, where fishermen kind of gather together to like rest, to gamble, to just chill and have a community together. So where we left off. So okay, so the goal for Henry is to find 7 more people to join Skander's crew here. And so it's late at night, and he was able to convince these two to join Skander's group. So that's good. And now we have over here Henry, who needs to find more. So I think he's just going to try to ask these two to ask around if anyone else would want to join him. But he also is saying to keep the treasure kind of a little bit on the down low here, because we don't want too many people to go find the treasure. And so I think now he's going to tell them to tell any friends, but keep it on the down low a little bit. So they're going to go off and find other people. And so now for him, he needs to find more. So we will ask the fate chart actually if these two were able to find a couple more people. Whoops, I didn't realize my phone storage was full, and so I'm gonna just get back into it. So basically what happened was the two sailors that he befriended, they were able to find four more people. So now he has three more people to join. He needs to find three more people to join Skander's crew over here. So I think we will definitely want to try again the gambling group here, because Henry's thinking, you know what, these guys seem like a good time because they do enjoy gambling. So he's thinking maybe he can entice them to join Skander's group into finding a treasure. But now these group of people are going to be kind of close-knit and close and tight together, and make sure that Skander doesn't know too much. We'll see too much about the treasure. So he's going to try to convince the gambling group over here to join the crew. So we're going to roll a 2d6, 2 and 5. So 7. So that is an odd. So yes, he was able to convince them. And so now, so he was able to convince them to at least just listen to his proposal. And now we will see their reaction. So let's see, we're going to do a 2d6. So 3, 5, 8. So try again. Okay. So I'm also going to do a +1 to this because that was a success from that oracle table there. So 5 and 5 is 10, +1. Agree. Okay, so they completely agree and they are all about it. They want to join the group, so that's perfect. So now we have a total of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, great. So Henry has 9 groups of people. So he is going to gather everyone here to let them know that we are forming this kind of group that will look for the treasure that's hidden somewhere deep in the uncharted seas. And so he's going to explain to the group that Skander has a crew, will join them, but they don't need to know about the treasure. He doesn't want to spoil it that much yet. And so, yeah. Okay, so as he is talking to this group, I do want to ask the fate chart here, if a random event happens. Like, I'm wondering, does an NPC over here, does Skander happen to like overhear this conversation? So we will see if a random event happens. 2 and 6. So that is a total of 8, and that is an even, so no. So we are good. So no random events happen yet. So I think we are just going to call it a night, and we will see kind of what happens in the morning. So the night has passed by, and we'll see Henry now will meet with Skander. So it is the morning. So he went back home, and I'll say probably his husband Charles is upset that he was gambling again. But Henry was telling Charles, don't worry, I have a plan to get that treasure. And Charles is probably thinking Henry's crazy, but you know what? He can do whatever he wants, and if he thinks that he can do it, he'll support him. So now Henry is meeting with Skander, and I do want to see if how this interaction goes. So Skander's definitely going to ask him if he found more people to join the crew. Henry says yes, and I do kind of want to see how he reacts. So let's see here. I guess I do want to ask kind of the reaction. So let's see, is he like happy with the crew that he found? I'll say a +1. So that's a 2 and 4. So 4 plus 2, or yeah, 6, so 7. Try again. Okay. So 5 5 and 5 is 8, 10, plus 1 is 11, so agree. Okay, great. So Skander is saying he is really happy with the crew that he found, and they are ready to embark on this adventure on the seas and to fight some pirates. So Henry was telling the group earlier that they are in it for the treasure, to find the treasure, but the main goal is for them to fight off some pirates. So now with kind of the crew on the ship, so now let's see if Skander kind of is, I kind of want to see if Skander's a little skeptical with this group here. So we will roll and let's see what happens. So we'll roll a 2d6, so a 3 and a 5. So no, he's not skeptical. Okay, so he is completely trusting. He is completely trusting Henry here. Okay, great. So they have made it onto the ship. So as you can see, everything has been kind of flowing nicely here and no random events. But as a GM, I could interject and make a random event happen here. So maybe as they are, beginning their sail over here on the seas, we can make a random event happen, and I can roll on the complex questions table to see what happens. So let's see. I'm gonna use that for what? So monsters. Okay, so we received the keyword monsters. So I'm gonna write here that it was a success and they have the crew formed and there are monsters. Okay, so as they are sailing the random event, we got the keyword monsters. So I'm actually going to interpret monsters as pirates are coming in here. So maybe pirates already have kind of made their way close and they are getting ready to fight some pirates. So I am interpreting that as my random event, that they are already kind of encountering some pirates over here. So that is an example of how you can add twists and surprises into your adventure. So I hope these examples helped, and please let me know if you have any questions or if you have advice for newer players. Feel free to put that into the comments and share your experience. But that is it for part 4. So that is part 4 of my July series. Well, thank you so much, adventurers. I can't wait to finish off the series and end with part 5. Until next time.